let's talk some trash. I am maybe 2 weeks late for the algorithm of YouTube to really pick up this book, but noticing how I'm starting to get views on talking about my favorite 2024 reads, I want to talk about my least favorite books of 2024. And I'm usually a very easygoing reader, I think. There is not a lot of stuff that I'm like, this is trash. But there are 4 books from 2024 that I will tell you they are trash, in my opinion, and how I experienced reading them. So let's get started. The From Blood and Ash series, a series that is very polarizing for a lot of readers. I have friends that rave about this series so much. So I will say I gave it my best. Like I do everything, I give it my best, I give it my all, and I made it to book number 5 of this series. I even read the prequel series that I did enjoy more. But by the time I made it to number 5, which is A Soul of Ash and Blood, literally my notes in my reading journal, I read this back in July. It's 560 pages, by the way. And once you learn that most of this book is just a rehash of the same events, but from Castile's point of view. I'm not a big Castile fan, and like, boy was giving us nothing new. It wasn't. I feel like you could easily do those, alternative point of view books in a really cool way, where you're bringing new information to the table. That's not what Castile brought, really. I should have DNF'd this. A whole book only of Castile's POV of the first book? Woof. That's my whole review for A Soul of Ash and Blood. And literally to do this video, I watched a YouTube video to kind of, refresh this book. And as soon as I was reminded, I think I blocked it out from my memory because I was so bored, and I can't believe that I read all 560 pages because I just remember that is the book that did me in, and I stopped reading the series after A Soul of Ash and Blood. And I have another gripe with Jennifer Armentrout. These titles, maybe it's just my brain, I cannot keep track of which book is what. I know that From Blood and Ash is the first one, but all the reiterations of that type of 4 or 5 words, from blood and ash, a light in the embers, soul, it's like a ChatGPT kicked out 8 titles of books with a similar feel, and it is a nightmare for my brain to keep track of it. So I have to Google every time to remind myself, oh, I know I read that book, but I have no idea which number book it was. So anyways, 1 star for me, A Soul of Ash and Blood. Okay, now to my second read for 2024 that was super low. It was a 2-star read, and it's The Crane Husband. You probably haven't heard of this book, and there's a good reason why, because it's not that great. This is, again, from my experience. I am a fantasy reader, and I do love a good romance fantasy. I knew that this wasn't really a romance fantasy. And The Crane Husband, I think, is a book for a reader that is, I picture it to be an older woman who lives in Oregon, or in the woods. She's seasoned, she's seen a lot, and it's 118 pages, and 118 pages too long for me. I thought it was going to really do something, and it didn't. It was told from the daughter witnessing her mom seeming in an abusive relationship, and the family history is that the moms tend to materialize into a bird and fly away. And the whole time I was left reading confused, thinking, do they actually turn into birds, or am I too literal here? Because I do recognize that I'm a very literal reader, and I like to read things literally, and when they're meant to be taken literally, and when it's figuratively, I kind of need to know that. I don't want to be left in a state of confusion with what the author is intending. And that is just at the end of the book, the mom flew away, and you're just kind of left thinking as a reader, like, what actually happened in this book? I'm confused. And when you leave me confused, it's not a good read. So that was actually 2 stars. I did give it the extra star because other than like the first, of Soul of Ash and Blood, what The Crane Husband at least gave me is it was interesting while it was perplexing and confusing. It at least kept my attention as much as it frustrated me. A Soul of Ash and Blood like frustrated me and also lost my attention. All right, Spectacular was absolutely not spectacular. That is my 3rd lowest rated book of 2024. And newsflash, I have 4 really low rated books of 2024. These are 2 stars and below. So Spectacular is the other 1 star. And it is, I think it's a novella It's not technically one of the books, like a whole book from the Caraval series. So, and I love this series. So the fact that I gave this a 1 star really tells you something because I love this series. So it goes Caraval, which was a 3-star read for me at the time. Finale, 5-star read for me. Legendary, 5-star read for me. And then Spectacular. And this stunk. I don't know if I'm like, it almost makes me want to reread these series because I'm like, am I off? Like, did I change or did this book change? Did the series change or is it me just like advancing as a reader? Because it's been nearly a year since I read those first 3 books. But Spectacular was revisiting Tella, and I just really didn't like how it painted Legend, and I feel like this book was almost a step backwards in their relationship. Like, I know in the series their relationship, the nature of how Legend is had made Tella feel pretty insecure about their relationships in a lot of parts, but then towards the end, especially in Finale, it changes. Like, there is more of like a finite conclusion and where hopefully they have a healthy relationship. This Spectacular book almost felt like it was taking 2 steps backwards in their relationship, where she's super insecure and unsure about how Legend feels and his feelings, how he feels about her, type of thing. And I really did not like that. It felt very immature, like going back in time for Tella and their relationship, and it was short. It just didn't have the sizzle that I wanted it to, so it was a 1 star for me. Thankfully, it was short though. Okay, my last low read for me for 2024 is Sky Shade. And I donated those books. I will donate books if I buy the physical copies and don't just do Kindle. I'll buy the physical books, and you gotta earn your space on my bookshelves because I have limited space. I do have this whole built-in thing that we added to this office when we bought the house. I am like so jazzed. Trying to think about where to point. Okay. I'm so jazzed about this whole built-in situation. But like, those are my husband's books for the most part over here, other than these cheese books. I went through a cheesemonger phase. Everyone does, right? And then these are my fantasy books. My babies. I'm like trying to figure out my babies. And if I don't like a book, get out of here. I'm donating you. I am bringing you to Changing Hands Bookstore and trading you in. And thankfully, at least people are reading the Lightlark series right now. So they did take the books back. But Sky Shade was a 2-star read for me. So Soul of Ash and Blood, 1 star. Crane Husband, 2-star. Spectacular, 1 star. This, I did give it 2. I was hanging in there. And there are a lot of different opinions on Sky Shade. And Lightlark was already kind of for me. Let me pull up what I ended up reading. Lightlark, I rated 3 stars. Nightbane was 3 stars. Sky Shade was 2. And I had high hopes for Nightbane, and it was okay. In Sky Shade, I do side with the people that feel like Grimm clearly as a character deserves better than Isla, and also to learn that her name is meant to be pronounced Isla. That's gonna get you a 1 star in my book already. Isla? Ah, what? What is with fantasy authors so often doing this and like butchering the pronunciation of names? Like, I do not understand why people do this. But Isla is one of the worst versions that I've heard. So that did not help it with its rating. But the 2 stars, it's like, what, when she was in the cave with Oro, I know every reader like always puts themselves obviously in the main character's point of view, but I do not like this Isla character, especially with how she was in this 3rd book. To tell to tell Grimm that like, hey, I'm giving this a great, I'm giving this my all. I'm really gonna, go for it, and let's do marriage like the right way. And then to pull what she pulled in the cave with Oro like so quickly. She folded so quickly. It wasn't like he even tried to seduce her and like try to tell her lies about her husband. No, she just immediately was like overcome with lust for this man. And I'm going off of, like, I might be wrong, but I think it was within like a 48-hour time span of her telling this Grimm character that she is going to like do this for real with him. Like, I don't even want to be friends with this girl. That is not the type of like girl. Yeah, I think the author made a love triangle, and the 2nd book was great, and I feel like what she tried to do in this 3rd book is make it not look so obvious that Grimm was going to be the winner of Isla's heart, and that this Oro guy stood a chance, and that the relationship stood a chance that she had with Oro. And that's what this whole cave scene was about. It was so frustrating for me as a reader, and I just couldn't get into it. I feel like so many times, so many of these books, like, you love them because you fall in love with the characters. Well, what happens when you really don't even like the main character? And I don't have the books because I donated it, but I think it was like from her point of view too. Like, I do not like that when you can't even enjoy their point of view. And then from that moment on, I'm salty. From that moment on, like, I'm not really going to be able to empathize with this character because I kind of feel like she deserves some of this stuff. And definitely does not deserve this Grimm character with how she treated him. So Skyshade was a 2-star read, and those are my trash reads of 2024. Obviously, this is all my opinion. There are many people who love these books that I've talked about in this video, but those were my lowest rated reads for 2024. I hope that I don't have a ton of 2-star and 1-star or 0. Do people give 0 stars to books that they don't DNF? I feel like that is brutal enough. Like, clearly I had to read the whole thing. I don't think I've given any book 0 stars yet. 1 star though, bare minimum. And I rate books based on how I feel reading them, the experience. So like, if I read them in a different season in my life, I might rate them differently. But I do not see how any of these 4 books I could ever be a fan of. To sum it up, books that you should warn your friends not to read: A Soul of Ash and you guys, I'm joking, but kind of serious. A Soul of Ash and Blood, The Crane Husband, Spectacular, and Skyshade. I have to finish the series, really. From Blood and Ash was like, it got off the rails so much for me that I just stopped. Skyshade, I sucked it up, tried to read it. I've heard that there are like more books coming out for that, but I will not be finishing that series. I'm done. I'm moving on, bigger and better things, and I hope that you guys have a wonderful 2025.